Hello, I'm making a quick video here per the request of my winemaking consultant to demonstrate how to use a very small scale double salting filter that we built by procuring parts from the local hardware store and online and reducing the TA in our wine. The whole purpose of doing this technique is to reduce TA in wine. If you have too high of TA or high levels of TA, you're going to taste it in the wine. It's going to taste tart. It also can make your mouth water, which can take away from the tannic expression on the tongue. In previous years, I did a number of different things to try to manage TA, including using different yeasts to reduce TA, including additives post-fermentation to reduce TA and malolactic, obviously, and I still never got to the lower level of TA that I was looking for in my red and white wines. So this year we stepped it up a notch and we're doing double salting. The process of double salting is adding calcium carbonate into juice pre-ferment and dropping out that malic and tartaric acid, reducing the TA in a smaller percentage of your juice, and then reintroducing that juice back into the main body of juice that you're going to ferment, which overall reduces the TA in the juice that you're about to ferment, and resulting in lower TA in the end of the wine. But introducing that calcium carbonate, it binds up those acids and crystals. It makes your juice really thick and cloudy. You have to be able to filter that out. If you were to just run it through a regular paper filter or otherwise, your filter is going to clog immediately. This stuff's too thick to filter with a regular filter, so you have to use filtering media. They're basically very fine fibers that you build up on the surface of the filter, and as more crystals go into those fibers, more layers of the fibers build up. So your filter is continuing to grow as you filter this juice, and resulting in it not clogging and still you capturing all of the crystals. The filtering process is the complex part about this technique, and this video is actually going to show you a very small scale set of equipment and a small scale way to filter that stuff out, and how I practically did it, so that if you are trying to do the same on a small scale, you can do that. I did around 120 gallons of filtering this year. The original equipment that I set up, the pump broke on it right away. This is tough on pumps. If you let the filters clog, you'll break pumps. So I ended up, and you'll see this in the video, I ended up gutting out the nice pump that I purchased for this, and I used an old pump that I had sitting on the shelf from previous winemaking stuff. And it's a small pump. It's not a very powerful pump, so it took me a longer period of time, but it ended up working. I ended up getting it to work. This video is not going to talk in detail about the chemistry behind double salting. You can look that up elsewhere and figure it out. It's not going to talk about the calculations for how much calcium carbonate you have to add. Make sure you figure that out. If you don't add enough calcium carbonate, you're not going to get the chemical reaction that you want, and it's all for naught. So those are critical things to know and figure out. It's also not going to talk about how much juice that you peel off in double salt to get the resulting TA. Work with your consultant. Figure that stuff out. You have to know that. You have to figure that out. This is really to show you a small scale filter that was built to do this more complex filtering and using the filtering media, and actually how to make it work, and some of the practicalities around how to make this small scale filter work. You'll have to excuse the background. And this year I'm not making wine in a professional winery, so you're not going to be looking at a professional winery in the background, but hopefully the content's helpful for you regardless, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, Regan here. I'm doing a quick video on a very micro way to double salt and the equipment and techniques needed to do that. So you can see here we have a 10-inch filter housing with a pressure gauge on front that's standing up on the table, and there's a brand new filter in there. I found that the 5 micron filters work fine. This is a 75 micron filter. There's some of these filters in these clear 10-inch housings that look like a ball of string. Those filters do not work. They have to be more of a solid filter, the ones that look like a paint roller. But you can see that we have 3 buckets here. One is going to have our juice, that we have our filtering media that we're going to body feed in. The middle bucket is for the pre-coat of the filter, so I put about 3/4 a gallon of water in there and 1 cup of filtering pre-coat media. We'll run that first, and then we'll switch to the juice bucket, and we put about 2 cups of the filtering media, filtering fibers per 3 gallons. I try to run at 3 gallon increments because that's about what this little 10-inch housing can handle. before it's full. And then our bucket all the way on the end there is going to be the bucket that collects the filtered juice that we're going to reintroduce back into the other juice before we start ferment. And I have 2 bags over here. I have a 60-pound bag of filtering media, and then I have a smaller 5-pound bag of pre-coat that I like to use. All right, so as I mentioned before, we have our center bucket here, which is the pre-coat mix bucket. It's nice to have some type of ladle at the handle. This is about 1 cup of the pre-coat media. I'm just going to put it in there and mix it up. I'll end up mixing that a bit more when I run it. We have the intake hose that's going to go to the pump, into the housing, and then it's actually going to run back into this bucket when we start. And then, but also I want to have my juice ready. So I'm going to put 2 cups, and I already added 1 in there, but we're going to put a 2nd cup of the body feed filter media in here. And we'll end up stirring that continuously as we run. But let's get this party started, and we'll try to... All right, so you can see we're running, and the filter housing is actually filling up with the pre-coat, and we're gonna let that get to the top. There's no water coming out of the output, no filtered water. This is water in the pre-coat media. Nothing coming out yet. We're gonna wait till that actually starts to flow out, and that'll know that our filter housing is full. There we go. It's starting to flow out. You can see our pressure is still at 0. And this is the point that we're going to switch over to start filtering the juice. The liquid coming out here is generally clear, but in this scenario, I just cover the hose with my finger and transfer it into the juice bucket. And now look at that. You can see in the filter housing, you can see that juice start to come in and replace what was the pre-coat water. And we're watching now for the color to change in the output. And that's when we'll know to switch it into our collection bucket for the juice. And we're still at 0 PSI on a brand new filter. All right, I'm starting to see color change, so I'm going to move that into our capturing bucket for the filtered juice. And all the while, I'm just gently stirring the juice bucket to keep the body feed filter media suspended in the juice. And then we pretty much just do that and watch the pressure gauge. You have to know the pressure that your pump can take. See now, look at it starting to raise. This particular pump actually broke 2 pumps this year doing this. I filtered about 120 gallons so far this year. But this pump is my last pump, and it's my smallest pump. And it can handle about 10 PSI. So we're gonna shut this off if it gets above 10 PSI. Now theoretically I should be able to run 3 gallons here before it does that. But it seems to be climbing quite quickly. So it's telling me maybe I don't have enough filter media in the body feed. Maybe I didn't add enough. But here we're climbing above 10 PSI. If I keep running it, it's gonna break this pump. So I'm gonna shut it down. All right, so here is the filter and the filter housing after a run. A really successful run. This would be much thicker, but this will still illustrate the point. I can pull that guy out, and I like to have another bucket next to me, but in this case I'm using a box, but you can actually just peel off. That's the actual fiber, the filter media that we've been working with, and the crystals from the wine that we're filtering out, the double salt crystals. But you can just peel that junk off and reuse this filter. You need some type of trash receptacle in doing this to put all your paper towels in and all your filter media. It's best to use a bucket, but I just grabbed a box. So, all right. The housing also has, and this is why you also need paper towels, but the housing is also that's juice in there with filter media and crystals, so we can refilter that. So instead of throwing that away, we're just gonna pour that right back into our juice bucket that we're filtering from. We have an empty housing. It's hard to do this with one hand, but we are going to put back in the filter and screw this in and get ready for a second run. And I'll show you that in a second. All right, so let's try to show you a good run one more time. So we're in the filter media coating bucket, right? Every time you recoat the filter, you have to add one more cup into here. Unlike the juice, I only added 2 cups to that 3 gallons. I'm not gonna add any more until that's fully done and I add fresh juice that doesn't have any media in it. But we're here in this bucket. We're starting a new filter that's empty. So I added another cup. Click it on, stir. Got the housing filling up. We're gonna wait till the output hose is flowing. Right now it's not flowing right. Look at your pressure gauge, we're at about 1. And the filter's still usable that's in there. Here we go. We have stuff coming out. I'm just gonna let it run for a minute. Now I'm gonna, again, grab the input hose. You can see the color of that media changing. You want to stir the juice bucket. That's the body feeding part. That's your manually body feeding. All right, and then we watch the output, watch it to change color, and we'll move it into the filtered juice bucket. So we're capturing that filtered juice. There we go. All right, so we got a good run kicked off. We're still at like 1 PSI. Listen to the sound of the pump. That tells you if it's different things, if it's getting clogged or not. But I'm just gently body stirring this 3 gallons. On a really good run, I can do all of that and run 3 gallons. That's a good run. When you're really focusing and things are going right, that's a good run with the setup. I've had to redo this filter 3 times now to get these 3 gallons. It's probably because I'm trying to hold a phone at the same time. But, so you can see, look at that. You can see that PSI start to creep up. You just have to know the PSI your pump can handle. Unfortunately, the only way to really know that is by breaking one. But in this case, I don't run this pump at over 10 PSI. It's a small pump, it's a little pump. It's kind of a workhorse pump. But I don't run it over 10 PSI. So when I see that get up to 10, I stop. This is what the juice looks like on the other end. So here's the pre. See how it looks like a milkshake? Here's the post. It's a lot more clear. The other thing that you can watch for is when you start to get to the end, you can see the amount of flow that your pump can do. So you just watch when it's flowing well. That's the amount of, output that it can do. If it starts getting half of that, even a quarter down to 25%, you know that your filter is starting to get clogged. So that's running at about what it can do, and still not, 3 or 4 PSI. So it's doing good. So when I get down to the end of these 3 gallons on this very small double salting, I just try to position the hose. There we go. We lost our input for a second there. It'll be interesting to see if the media fell out. The filter media fell out, but it did not. So we're still running. Oh, see the tip of that hose is getting above the water there. That's what's causing that. So I'll just hold it down and tilt the bucket in the direction that hose is in, and we'll try to run the rest of this. We're still not up at my 10 PSI where I would stop running this particular pump. And I still have stuff flowing, so that's good. Okay, let's just recap some of the most important things to make this very, very small scale double salt filtering work. Again, we use a pre-coat bucket, 3/4 gallon of water, 1 cup of your pre-filter coat for each time that you fill up that housing. And then I generally work in 3 gallon batches, which we add 2 cups of the filter, body feed filter to that. You want to make sure that you, as anything we do in winemaking, sterilize everything before you start. All the insides of the hoses, run sterilizing fluid through them, the housing, all your buckets, right? It's going to get messy. You're going to get, even the table, you're going to get stuff on the table. But sterilize everything before you start and flush it out with water. It's really important when you add the calcium carbonate to the juice that you let it sit for 20 minutes so that all of those crystals and all the extra calcium carbonate sink to the bottom. You're never going to be able to filter out the sludgy crystals with a device like this. You're not going to be able to run it all. You're going to lose some of it. Maybe in 3 gallons per 20 gallons, you're going to lose. Don't even try to filter it. So let that stuff settle and rack off the top into your 3-gallon processing bucket, so you just don't clog your filter up with all of that junk. The filters, do not use the 10-inch ones that look like a ball of yarn. Do use the 5 micron to 75 micron ones that look like a paint roller. You can use them multiple times. When they're brand new, they start out at 0 psi. Maybe past their usable life, they're starting out at 5 psi. Then it's time to switch the filter. But I mean, you can probably run 20 gallons on 4 or 5 different filters depending on the media that you use. Do definitely get different types of media and try different types of media, pre-coat versus body feed. Use finer one for pre-coat, a longer, coarser fiber for body feed. You'll know that you're having success when you can fill that whole housing up without going above your pressure threshold for your pump, right? Even to the point where it's tough to pull out that filter. I've had to use like end of a metal bottle brush to kind of scrape some out to pull out the filter when I've had really good runs because it clogs it up. And you'd also know by looking at the juice that comes out, there shouldn't be any creamy white type crystal stuff in the bottom of your juice. It should be clear juice, right? Look at your juice. Those would be the 2 indicators that you're using. Very, very good pre-coat and body feed combinations on the filter media. Let's see. Paper towels, it gets messy. This is really messy. Use paper towels, have a place to throw your filter media and your paper towels. Pumps, the 2 diaphragm pumps that I use broke within 2 gallons. It was kind of disgusting, really. I've had to use an impeller pump, a smaller impeller pump to get it to work. Have extra impellers, have extra pumps. Maybe think about buying your pumps within the return period of when you're going to do this, because they're not going to work for you. They're going to break, and you buy a $280 diaphragm pump and you get 2 gallons out of it. It's not worth it. So sometimes it's tough when we get ready for crush to be buying things last minute, but that might be an item you truly do try to buy last minute so that you can return them if they don't work for you. So within 30 days, look at the return period. Some of those places have 60 days return periods, and then know your math. If you don't add enough calcium carbonate, if you undercut the calcium carbonate, you will not be successful in this. You have to put enough of that in there. Know your math, work with your consultant, read your books. Know your math with the amount of juice post double salting that you're adding back into your main fermenter so that you actually do bring down your TA to the level that you want. You don't want to go through all this work and then not get the results and have wine that tastes tart. Let's not do that. So good luck. It's messy. I'm already working on a bigger system for next year, a plate type system with mud plates in there that can do more volume, because this is frankly pretty tedious to run 30 gallons through this little setup. It's, you're spending 2, 3, 4 hours out in wherever you're making wine doing this, and that's after sometimes a full day of picking and then crushing and destemming and all the chemistry that comes with making good wine and all the processing into fermenters. So this is just added on top of that. So the higher volume you can do, the better, but this is definitely a feasible setup for, I was doing 20, 30 gallons a day with this setup. There's one other misnomer or Just one other idea that I wanted to talk about briefly. Some people think, and the concept's out there, that if you ripen fruit long enough, your TA is going to reduce. I work with cold hardy variants, Marquette, Frontenac Gris, others, and I've seen that definitely not to be the case. I was working with some Marquette this year that was at 26 bricks, and it was at 3.07 pH, and I was like, wow, this is great. I'm not going to have to double salt it. It's got to have a low TA. I went and tested the TA, and we were at 14.5. It was a really high TA. Where, you know, the previous weekend I was working with some Frontenac Gris that was more around 21 bricks, and it was significantly less ripe, and it was also at 14.5 TA. So hang time on the fruit, in my experience, does not reduce your TA. You have to manage it somehow in the winery.